In this video, we're going to show you to install an instrument cluster bulb on your Ford Ranger, and this is located behind your instrument cluster. On the bottom half of your steering column, there is a cover right here. It's going to be 3 Phillips head screws. Let's go ahead, loosen and remove those screws. Once we have the screws out, let's go ahead and pop this lower cover off. And just slide that out. We'll go ahead and remove our gauge cluster trim. There are normally 3 screws that go across the top. These are 9/32. Our trim only has 2 in place. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the ones that we have in here. Use a trim tool to just kind of pop out our bezel right here for our radio stuff. Now underneath here, there's going to be a couple more bolts here, or screws. Using our 9/32, we're going to go ahead and remove those as well. Pop out that screw. I'm just going to pull that forward a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and grab our trim here, and we're just going to slowly work its way around. Let's go ahead and remove the 2 screws holding on our lower knee panel here. One of the screws is just to the right of the emergency brake release lever. The other one is just to the right of the hood release. Let's go ahead and pop off our knob for our headlight switch. And this should allow us to go ahead and work this unit up. Let's go to the other side and release that. I'm going to go ahead and release our clip here for our dimmer switch. Just pry up on these little tabs here. Use your pry tool and pop that up and off. Set your trim bezel aside. Lift up on the column cover. Just pop this up. Remove this unit, set it aside. Now that we have access to our gauge cluster, there's going to be 4 screws that we need to get to. There's 2 on this side here, and there's 2 on this side here. We're going to use our 9/32 socket and extension with our little ratchet. I'm going to go ahead, loosen, and remove these screws. Now what I want to do is go ahead and start working our gauge cluster out. And there is an electrical connector on the back, so I want to go ahead and disconnect this. Just going to push in on this little tab here, pinch and pull. There's one on the very bottom side right here. Do the same thing. Pinch and pull. That's going to allow us to pull the gauge cluster up a little bit higher. And we get to our last connection right here. Let's go ahead and remove our cluster. Simply identify the ones that are blown out, twist counterclockwise, and pop it out. Take your new bulb, drop it in, and twist it clockwise, lock it into place. Now go ahead and repeat for the other 4, or you can just replace the ones that are needed. Now we're going to go ahead and reverse the procedure. Now each one of these connectors is specific, so you can't mess them up. Now we have to slide our gauge cluster in with the gauge facing upward in order to fit it into the dash and behind the steering wheel. So we can easily locate our lower connection right here. I'm going to go ahead and line this up. Snap that in. We have our larger connector here that needs to go up in the upper portion. Line that up and snap that in. Then we have our last connection up on the upper left-hand side and snap that into place. Once all 3 connectors are in, let's go ahead and line up our gauge cluster. And let's go ahead and get all 4 screws lined up, and we'll start those all by hand. Let's get that caught a few threads. Let's go ahead and get the one below it. And we'll just repeat this process for the left 2 screws. Get our top screw installed. With all 4 installed, let's go ahead and tighten those down. Now these here, you just want to snug them down. They don't have to be super tight. Now that we have our gauge cluster in, we can go ahead and start installing our trim panels. Now we have our upper gauge trim bezel right here. We want to go ahead and install our connector and our headlight switch. Now our headlight switch has 2 little tabs here with holes in it, and our original dash would have had 2 plastic posts right here to put 2 small screws in there. Well, ours is broken, so on your particular model, if these aren't broken, you're going to want to go ahead and install your headlight switch and then put the screws into it. In our case here, we're simply going to connect our big bulkhead connector right here. This is our dimmer switch. Snap that into place. I'm going to bring our trim bezel down, kind of get this lined up in. I just kind of get this kind of in its main vicinity here. In our case here, we're simply going to put our headlight knob into place, and we're going to use our knob here to Secure that into place here. Okay, now that we have that lined up, I'm going to go ahead and push our trim bezel back into place. Just make sure everything lines up. We'll line up our buttons here. Grabbed our pick here, our little hook, and we're just going to pull up a little bit on this little metal stud here, or a little retainer clip, and we're going to just flex this up and into place. I'm going to do the same on the other side, repeat the process. I'm going to install our hardware up on the top of our gauge cluster here. Now you would normally have 3. Our particular vehicle only had 2 in the top here. They're just missing a 3rd screw. We're going to install the 2 that we have. Let's go ahead and install our radio here. And the top will snap into place. And then we have our 2 screws for the lower portion here. I want to make sure that those are snug but not super tight. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and fit our lid on here. I'm going to press in on our hazard button here, give us a little bit more clearance. I'm going to go ahead and install our lower column cover here. And this in general should line up our pins with the lower cover to the upper. I'm going to go ahead and get 1 screw in on this side here, and we'll start that just a couple threads, and then we'll come on over to the other side and get that lined up. And then we'll snug down our 3rd screw on the other side.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.